Paul Ware was born in the United States on September 11th, 1961. From a young age, he learnt the values of hard work, persistence, and respect for the world around him. He grew up in a small town, and his childhood was both simple and full of challenges that would later shape his path towards faith and ministry. As a child, Paul was always eager to explore the outdoors, and he spent his early years in the vast landscapes of America's countryside, where he developed a love for nature. For fun, he liked to run through fields, climb trees, and fish in nearby lakes. He was amazed by the beauty of the world, and he often felt a sense of wonder when he looked up at the sky or watched the seasons change. He may not have fully understood it at the time, but these experiences planted the seeds of his faith, and he later came to see God's hand in everything. Paul grew up in a family that worked hard and taught him the importance of discipline and duty. He had a strong sense of honesty and loyalty because he was expected to help around the house from a young age, whether it was doing chores, working in the garden, or helping his father with different tasks. He learned the value of hard work and persistence, which would shape his approach to both ministry and personal growth, even though he was a very active and adventurous child. Paul was also very thoughtful, and he often wondered what things really meant of life and often wondered what the point of life was. His family gave him a moral base, but he wasn't immediately drawn to Christianity in the way that some might think. He went to church services sometimes, but faith wasn't yet the most important thing in his life. Instead, he focused on school, friends, and the everyday things that happened. Childhood memories. As Paul got older, he had times of struggle and doubt. Like many young people, he wondered who he was and what road he should take in life. He was introduced to different ideas and worldviews, some of which went against the traditional values he had been taught. It was during this time of searching that he started to feel restless and like something was missing, but he couldn't figure it out yet. Explain what it was. During his teenage years, he acted out and thought a lot about himself. He tried to find success and meaning in the world through material things, but nothing could fully fill the longing inside him that drew him to books, theory, and talks about what life is all about. But none of these pursuits gave him the peace he was looking for. Paul's journey towards faith really began when he realized how flawed he was. Through the help of friends, mentors, and powerful personal experiences, he slowly came to realize that his life needed something bigger than himself. He encountered the message of the gospel in a way that deeply convicted him and shook him to his core. His childhood and early youth had been preparation for this moment, the lessons on how to be responsible. When he finally became a Christian, duty and honesty suddenly had a whole new meaning for him because of God's grace. It wasn't a choice he made on the spur of the moment, it was a big change that would affect the rest of his life. Paul Washer talks a lot about how God was with him even before he fully understood it. The things he did as a child, the beauty of nature, the discipline of hard work, and the questions he had about life's meaning were all taking steps. Stones that led him to his ultimate calling. His childhood was not only a time of preparation, but also proof of how God works in people's lives before they even know it. Paul Washer would become one of the most passionate and unwavering speakers in Christian ministry because of his curiosity, discipline, and search for the truth. His childhood affected his unwavering dedication to preaching the truth and his strong desire for others to come to know the life-changing power of faith. A man of discipline, faith, and unwavering commitment to his ministry, Paul Washer spent his days preaching, traveling, and tirelessly spreading the message of the gospel. He had spent years passionately proclaiming the truth, often pushing himself to the limit. But on a fateful evening in 2017, his body gave out, and he faced one of the scariest moments of his life, a severe heart attack that would test not only his physical strength, but also his faith in ways he had never imagined. It started out like any other day. Paul had just gotten home from a long day of speaking engagements. His body was tired, but his heart was full because he knew that his ministry had helped many people. But in the back of his mind, he had been feeling a strange pain for days, a tightness in his chest and a tiredness that seemed deeper than usual. He brushed it off, thinking it was just exhaustion from working so hard for the Lord. That night, as he sat in his study thinking about the day's work, he felt a sudden wave of pain that was unlike anything he'd ever felt before. It was like someone had put a huge weight on his chest, and the pain went down his arm and into his hand. He tried to stand up, but his body felt weak and unsteady. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and he knew right then that this was not something he could ignore. His family heard the noise and rushed to his side. Rosario, his wife, knew right away how serious the situation was. Her eyes were filled with fear, but she stayed cool and called for help while holding his hand tightly. Even though Paul was in terrible pain, he was able to whisper, "The Lord is sovereign." This was a phrase he had preached many times, but in the middle of his own pain, it took on a deeply personal meaning. The ambulance quickly came, and while he was being rushed to the hospital, paramedics worked quickly to stabilize him. Paul found himself in a position he had rarely been in before, completely vulnerable and powerless. He had always been the one praying over others and encouraging those who were sad, but now he was the one who needed comfort. He was lying on the hospital bed, surrounded by... Even though he was in a lot of pain, he felt a deep sense of peace. He had always believed that life was in God's hands, and now that he was facing the possibility of death, that belief was put to the ultimate test. Instead of fear, his mind was filled with thoughts of his family, his ministry, and the people he had yet to reach. He prayed quietly, giving everything up to God. The medical staff moved quickly. They told him about the risks of emergency surgery and told him he was going to have one. His wife and children stood outside the operating room praying fervently. Rosario held their children close to her, her heart breaking at the thought of losing the man she had been with for so many years. The minutes felt like hours as they waited for a miracle. The surgery went well, but it would take a long time to get better. When Paul woke up, he saw his wife's teary eyes and felt the gentle touch of her hand. "You're still here," she whispered. "I'm so relieved." And he smiled weakly and nodded, "By God's grace." As he lay in the hospital bed that night, he thought about what had happened. He had spent his whole life preaching about eternity and how short life is, but now he had to face the truth of his own death. Having this experience made him realize that even the strongest men are weak. The love and wishes from his family, friends, and he was awed by the Christian community. From all over the world, messages of support, stories of lives changed by his ministry, and prayers for his healing came in. They reminded him that he wasn't alone, that his work had changed many lives, and that God was using him even while he was sick. Paul's view changed. He had always been driven. He was still determined to complete his goal, but now he knew how important it was to rest, enjoy time with his family, and know that his body is not unbeatable. His wife became his biggest fan and made sure he took the time to heal and slow down when he needed to. His kids, who used to see him as an unstoppable force, now saw him as a man who needed their love and support just as much as they did. Even though the heart attack was one of the worst and most painful events of his life, it also changed him. It strengthened his faith, broadened his view, and reminded him of the truth that he had always known. God is sovereign. When he finally started preaching, his message had even more weight because he spoke not only as a man of doctrine, but also as a man who had walked through the valley of the shadow of death and come out on the other side with a new sense of purpose. The scar on his chest would always remind him of that terrible night, but so would the lessons he had learned. He now went through life with more gratitude, more humility, and unwavering faith that no matter what trials came his way, he was held firmly in the hands of a faithful God. I really value you watching and leaving a like and comment below. If you liked the video, please do so. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.